Today we're going to learn how to draw dogs and puppies. So I have this book called How to Draw Dogs and Puppies, a complete guide for beginners by J.C. Amberlin. And it really inspired me to try and draw a bunch of different kinds of dogs. The book, you don't need this book, but this is the book that's inspired this video. It does have some basics on dog's head, the average shape. Of course, there's many variations, and it talks about the different kinds of eyes. It talks about the anatomy of dogs and just some of their differences, like the fur and the shapes of ears and eyes and so forth. And then it goes into the different groups, starting with puppies, because puppies usually have a larger head compared to their body and softer fur, things like that. And then it will go into the different groups of dogs, like it has the herding group and sporting group, non-sporting, and terriers and so forth. So anyway, let's try our hand at drawing some dogs. So I found this book at my library, and like I said, you don't need a book to draw animals. You can just look at pictures or your own pets. But I did find this book really helpful because it had so many drawings in it. Now, as I went through it, it starts with basic shapes, and then we'll show you how to add details and steps. And I really did like that process. There were just a few times where I got the proportions wrong, and so I didn't like the fact that it didn't really follow some of the other ways I've been learning to draw, where you base it more on proportions. This was more just like shapes, and well, that works for maybe like this front of a head, because it is proportional. When you were doing the active or dogs in motion, she didn't really have any techniques to help with proportion, and I ended up having to erase the work that I did following her examples, and then just using proper proportion and other techniques to get my drawing right. And I'll show you that at the end. You'll see how I did that. This pencil that I use, I think it might be charcoal because it's not erasing very well. Anyway, but yeah, so basically just starting out, practicing dog heads is a great way if you are intimidated by painting really any mammal. I would say start with the head, because that's where so much of the expression is anyway, and the eyes and the face. And she goes into detail. This is just like basic generic dog, and then you can change the shape of the snout, the ears. Some do have different eyes. She shows this was good practice here, just the front and the side view of an eye, and how they have that little dark area. It's pretty common that they have a little dark area in the middle, and then of course there's different colored eyes, but just the shape's pretty similar. Some of them are larger or more almond shaped than others. And some might have a darker eye than others too. Okay, so I think I'm trying to get the little highlight, but I didn't put enough shading, and this eraser is too dull to really get that highlight the way she did in the book. And like I said, you don't need this book, but all these little exercises are really, I found, useful for learning how to draw animals. And there's just so many variations and sizes, shapes, and especially fur and ears, different shapes of ears. So this would be, I think it's a Chihuahua ear. And then let's do some more ears here. Okay, this is going to show you how it's got just a floppy ear, but like an, I forget the, maybe a Pomeranian. I'm not sure what this animal is actually. How it has the basic shape and then the fur kind of covers it. So a Greyhound kind of has like a tulip ear. It goes up and then it kind of curls over, and the same with the Jack Russell Terrier has a little button ear. It's like half up and half flopped over. So yeah, it was really interesting and good practice, I think, to try the different variations. Noses are pretty similar, but there's still some variations in noses, especially with, I think, the length of the snout and maybe the color of the fur around it. But then again, there's some animals like the pugs that hardly have any snout. I mean, it's just like really the nose is just more flat. So here's a side view. I kind of struggled with this a little bit, trying to get it three-dimensional. All right. So I'm just kind of doing a few of the exercises in this video. I decide to take pictures of my own dogs. I have a Corgi and a Border Collie. And this is a little limerick. I've been reading a book about limericks, so I made my own about my dog. So just a silly poem. So this one went okay, but like I said, it's not proportioned properly. So I go back and I keep on adding to his caboose. So yeah, I could just tell by eyeballing it that something was off. Some of these things are very subtle. So really just your exercise with eyeballing your and using your pencil to maybe measure and check proportions is definitely a good idea. The book does talk a lot about how she captures details and just going back over, kind of like with painting, with the drawing, you're still going back. She does several layers of shading and then pulling out highlights, and that really gives the a more realistic image and not so flat. So this was my first attempt of my Border Collie using her technique of just like balls and cylinders, and it just didn't work very well. So I tried, but I'm using a picture of my dog and I'll show you it real quick. So here's the picture I was working from, and he's not quite, he's quartering toward me, so it was a little harder to figure out how to capture that quartering. He's not in complete profile. And yeah, there's just something off. He's not as long as he should be either, and his face definitely is not recognizable to me. So after trying that, I decided to just go with what I know about proportion and do the whole thing over. And just use my sights and measuring, and it turned out a lot better. Now, I would say what I gained most from this drawing exercise was the fur. Was besides the gesture of the action and motion, the fur actually, the details of the fur really help with the motion, because also the way his legs are, but it's just flying through the air. He was pretty muddy by this point, so some of the fur is also separated. It's like wet fur flying through the air, like a dog shaking himself off almost. So that was fun to draw, and I'm not quite there yet, but looking back, I'll show you the picture and how I was really satisfied with that. I've never, I think, painted or drawn this dog before with his fur flying like this, so it was kind of fun. I think it helps relay that message of action. So like here's more calm, the corgis just relax in a calm state, and this guy is just kind of, well, Sammy's being Sammy. He's 100 miles an hour. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, leave a thumbs up.